When she rang the intercom of a mansion, she asked to clean the bathroom in exchange for a plate of food. Inside, a lonely businessman saw his life turned upside down by that fragile figure. He didn't know it, but he was about to discover that love and purpose can arise in the most unexpected way. If this beautiful story of overcoming and love interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. Continuing. The doorbell echoed through the mansion in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, cutting through the heavy silence of the rainy afternoon. Matthew Reynolds, at 42, was still in the impeccable suit from the business meeting that had just ended. Another multi-million-dollar contract signed, another business victory that should have filled him with satisfaction, but only increased the emptiness he felt inside that huge, silent house. The intercom rang again, this time more insistently. Matthew frowned. No one visited him without notice, especially on a Tuesday afternoon with this torrential rain battering the city. Reluctantly, he walked to the security monitor and activated the camera at the main gate. The image that appeared on the screen made him choke. A small girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old, was completely soaked on the other side of the wrought iron gate. Brown hair stuck to her face, faded pink clothes clinging to her thin little body, bare feet stepping in the puddles forming on the asphalt of the sidewalk. "Please, sir," the weak little voice reached him through the intercom, almost swallowed by the sound of the rain. "Can I clean your bathroom? I just want a plate of food." Matthew felt something turn in his stomach. Those little brown eyes, even through the distorted image of the monitor, carried a sadness too deep for such a small child. There was no fear in that look, but a resignation that haunted him, as if she were already accustomed to closed doors, to rejections, to the indifference of the world. "My God," muttered Matthew, his hands trembling as he typed the code to open the electronic gate. He completely forgot about the rain, forgot about the Italian suit that had cost a fortune, forgot about everything except that fragile little figure waiting for him outside. He ran across the marble entrance, crossed the garden, carefully planned, by the most expensive landscaper in the city, and reached where the girl was standing, still wet, but now with eyes wide with surprise at seeing the gate open. "Come here, little one." Matthew extended his arms, and without hesitation, she threw herself into them like someone clinging to the last hope. The tiny body trembled with cold, and Matthew could feel through the soaked clothes how thin she was, almost just skin and bone. "What's your name?" he asked as he carried her into the house, searching for towels in the powder room cabinet. "Emily," she answered softly, allowing him to wrap her in a fluffy towel. "Emily Wilson." "And where are your parents, Emily?" The girl lowered her eyes, nervously fidgeting with the ends of the towel. "Don't have any. I ran away from the shelter because they were going to send me to another place again. I didn't want to go anywhere else." Matthew felt his heart tighten. At that moment, looking at that child who had knocked on his door asking for work in exchange for food, he found himself faced with a reality that had always existed, but from which he had kept himself conveniently distant. His life of executive meetings, expensive restaurant dinners and international trips had never prepared him to deal with human vulnerability in its purest form. "Are you hungry?" he asked, and saw her eyes light up slightly. "A little," admitted Emily, although her stomach audibly growled. Matthew led her to the gourmet kitchen, which looked more like a showroom from a decorating magazine than a place where food was prepared. He opened the refrigerator, filled with imported products and ready-made dishes from sophisticated restaurants, and realized he had no idea what a child would like to eat. "What do you like?" he asked, somewhat lost. "Anything," Emily answered, with a sincerity that touched him deeply. "At the shelter, we ate what was available. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't, but I always gave thanks." Matthew found some simple ingredients and prepared a sandwich with cheese and ham, accompanied by a glass of warm milk. Emily ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the most delicious meal in the world. He observed her in silence, impressed by the manners and delicacy of this girl who had been through so much. "Thank you, Mr. Matthew," she said when she finished, carefully wiping her mouth with the napkin. "Now can I clean the bathroom? I know how to clean well. I learned at the shelter." "You don't need to clean anything, Emily. You're my guest." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I can't stay for free. I always have to do something to deserve it." Those words hit Matthew like a punch to the stomach. A 6-year-old child had already internalized the idea that she needed to earn care, affection, a simple plate of food. How many doors had she knocked on? How many times had she heard that there was no space, that there were no resources, that there was no possibility? "You don't need to deserve anything, little one. You already deserve everything just by existing." Emily looked at him as if he had said something completely incomprehensible, and Matthew realized that perhaps it really was. For a child who had learned to survive by offering work in exchange for basic necessities, the idea of receiving something without giving anything in return was an alien concept. "Where will you sleep tonight?" asked Matthew, although he already knew he wouldn't let her leave. "I don't know. Sometimes I sleep at the bus station. Sometimes I find some covered place. But don't worry, sir. I always find a way." The naturalness with which she talked about living on the streets made Matthew feel a mixture of admiration and horror. Admiration for the strength of this little person who had found ways to survive in a hostile world, and horror at knowing that a child should never need to develop these skills. "Today, you're going to sleep here," he said firmly. "In the guest, a room. There's a big bed, private bathroom, and in the morning we can talk better about all this." "Are you sure?" Emily asked, and for the first time since she arrived, a shy smile appeared on her lips. "I'm absolutely sure." Matthew led her down the wide hallway that led to the guest rooms. The house, which had always seemed a symbol of his professional success, now revealed itself as a cold and impersonal space. All those luxurious square meters, and he had never noticed how life was missing inside. Emily's small steps echoed on. The marble, and somehow that tiny sound seemed to fill the void he didn't even know existed. In the room, Matthew found sleepwear that one of the staff had left, and that had never been used. They were too big for Emily, but would serve for the night. He showed her where the bathroom was, how to use the shower, where the clean towels were. "If you need anything during the night, my room is at the end of the hall. You can call me without fear, okay?" "Okay, Mr. Matthew. Thank you very much for everything." When Matthew closed the bedroom door, he stayed outside for a few minutes, listening to the muffled sounds of Emily preparing for bed. For the first time in many years, he didn't feel alone in that house. There was another presence there, small and fragile, but that somehow made everything different. He returned to his office but couldn't concentrate on the reports he needed to review. His mind constantly returned to that girl who had appeared at his door like an unexpected gift from destiny. What forces had conspired for her to choose exactly his house, among so many others in the neighborhood? What kind of courage did a child need to have to knock on a stranger's door and ask for work? Around midnight, Matthew decided to check if Emily was okay. He walked silently down the hallway and slightly opened the door to the guest room. The light from the hallway illuminated the bed, where the girl slept deeply, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets like a precious gift. She had placed her dirty, wet clothes to dry on the windowsill, organizing everything with meticulous care that revealed the habits of someone who had learned to take care of herself very early. On the nightstand, Matthew noticed a folded piece of paper and a small, smooth stone that she apparently kept as a treasure. He stood there for long minutes, observing the peaceful breathing of that child who had come into his life so unexpectedly. Something fundamental had changed in him that day, a transformation he couldn't yet completely name, but which he felt spreading through his chest like a sense of purpose he had long lost. Matthew woke up before the alarm, something that hadn't happened in years. His thoughts immediately turned to Emily, and he wondered if she would still be there or if it had all been just a strange dream. The habitual silence of the mansion seemed different that morning, charged with an expectation he couldn't name. He put on a robe and walked to the kitchen, where he planned to prepare a special breakfast for his little guest. But upon arriving, there he was paralyzed. Emily was already up, wearing the oversized nightgown with sleeves rolled up, carefully cleaning the marble countertop that he didn't even know was dirty. "Good morning, Mr. Matthew," she said with a shy smile, not stopping what she was doing. "I hope you don't mind. I woke up early and wanted to help." "Emily, you don't need to do this." Matthew approached her, touched by the initiative but also concerned. "You're a child. You should be playing, not cleaning." "But I like cleaning," she responded with sincerity. "It makes me feel useful. And besides, you were so good to me yesterday that I want to repay you somehow." Matthew observed the careful movements of the girl, the way she stretched on her tiptoes to reach higher places on the counter, the absolute concentration on her little face as she worked. There was something almost meditative in the way she cleaned, as if each gesture were a silent prayer of gratitude. "How about we make a deal?" suggested Matthew, sitting on one of the high kitchen stools to be at her eye level. "You can help me with some things around the house, but you'll also have time to play, to draw, to be a child. What do you think?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Do you have paper and colored pencils?" "I'm sure we can find that somewhere," Matthew smiled, realizing how simple it was to make this girl happy. "But first, how about a proper breakfast?" Together they prepared a meal that for Matthew was simple, but for Emily represented luxury. Fresh bread, fruits, natural juice, scrambled eggs. She ate with the same care as the night before, savoring each forkful, thanking with each bite. "Mr. Matthew," she said, delicately wiping her mouth, "can I ask you a question?" "You can ask as many as you want." "Why do you live alone in such a big house?" The question, asked with the typical innocence of children, hit Matthew head-on. How to explain to a 6-year-old girl that he had lost himself amid so much success, that he had built a business empire, but forgotten to build a family, that he had collected achievements but lost the ability to truly connect with other people. "It's a long story," answered Matthew. "Sometimes we get so busy working that we forget about the important things in life." "Like what?" "Like having someone to talk to at breakfast," he said, looking directly at her. "Like you." Emily smiled, and in that smile Matthew saw a purity that he had long unlearned to recognize. After breakfast he showed her the entire house, observing how she reacted to each environment with a mixture of admiration and respectful curiosity. In the office, she stopped in front of shelves full of books and business trophies. "You're very smart," she commented, running her little fingers along the spine of some books. "You must have studied a lot." "I did. And you, Emily? Do you like to study?" "I like it, but at the shelter it was difficult. Sometimes there were classes, sometimes not. And when we moved places, it took a while to get a spot in the new school." Matthew felt a pang of indignation, imagining how much that bright girl's education had been hampered by instability. Mentally, he began to make plans. If Emily were to stay there, and increasingly he hoped she would need a good school supplies, pedagogical support to recover what she had lost. "Want to see something interesting?" Matthew opened one of the office drawers and took out some blank papers and a box of colored pencils that he used to make colorful annotations on contracts. "These are yours now." Emily held the materials as if they were made of gold, her eyes shining with emotion. Without wasting time, she sat on the floor and began to draw. Matthew continued working on some documents, but constantly glanced over to observe her. What he saw surprised him. Emily's drawings weren't the typical scribbles of a 6-year-old child. There was organization, a sense of proportion and creativity that impressed him. She drew houses, but not simple houses. They were elaborate projects with gardens, verandas, architectural details that revealed an unusual spatial vision for her age. "These drawings are amazing, Emily," Matthew commented, bending down to better examine her work. "Where did you learn to draw like this?" "I didn't learn," she answered, concentrating on coloring a window. "I just see the houses in my head and draw them. I like to imagine what a perfect house would be like." "And what would that perfect house be like?" Emily stopped drawing and looked at him seriously. "It would be a house where all children who don't have families could live together. It would have colorful rooms, a large kitchen where everyone could cook together, a library with lots of books, and a garden where we could plant flowers and vegetables." Matthew was silent, deeply touched by the response. This girl, who had suffered so much from not having a home, dreamed of creating homes for other children in the same situation. There was something deeply moving about the generosity of that small heart. You know something, Emily? I work building buildings and houses, and I think you have very good ideas about architecture. Architecture? It's the art of creating beautiful and functional buildings, of making houses where people feel happy. Emily's eyes widened. There's a job for that. There is. And you could be a very good architect when you grow up. Really. Especially if you keep studying and developing this ability of yours to imagine spaces. Emily returned to her drawings with renewed enthusiasm, now knowing that this silent passion had a name and could become a profession. Matthew observed her work, impressed with the girl's concentration and dedication. During lunch, which they prepared together, Matthew decided to approach a delicate subject. Emily, I need to make some calls today to people who work with children to try to better understand your situation. Do you mind? The girl stopped eating, a shadow of fear passing over her face. Are you going to send me away? No, little one, but there are laws, procedures. If you're going to stay here, I need to do everything the right way so that no one can take you away from me. You want me to stay? The question was asked with a vulnerability that broke Matthew's heart. I very much want you to stay, Emily. This house is much better with you here. Then I want to stay too, she said, smiling again. But what if people say I can't? I'll do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen, Matthew promised, and at that moment knew he would move mountains if necessary to protect this child. The afternoon was filled with phone calls. Matthew spoke with lawyers specializing in child and adolescent rights, with social workers, with psychologists. He discovered that the process to become Emily's legal guardian would be complex but not impossible. He would need to prove that he had the conditions to offer an adequate home, undergo psychological evaluations, have his house inspected. Meanwhile, Emily continued drawing, now spreading her work all over the house. She stuck some drawings on the refrigerator, others on the hallway walls. It was as if she were marking territory, leaving her fingerprints in every corner of that space she was beginning to consider her own. At the end of the afternoon, when Matthew finished the most important calls, he found Emily in the main room, sleeping on the Italian leather sofa, still holding a colored pencil in her hand. The drawings were scattered around her like colorful petals. He covered her with a blanket and stood there observing the scene. In less than 24 hours, that girl had completely transformed the dynamics of his house and his life. The spaces seemed more welcoming, the sounds richer, the colors more vibrant. For the first time in a long time, Matthew allowed himself to imagine a different future. A future where he would wake up every day knowing there was someone waiting for him, where meals would be shared, where professional success would have a greater meaning, providing security and opportunities for that extraordinary child that destiny had placed in his path. That night, before going to sleep, Matthew made a silent promise. He would do whatever was necessary to give Emily the family she had never had, and in the process, perhaps discover that she was also giving him the family he didn't even know he needed. 2. Weeks passed since Emily had come into Matthew's life, and the routine of the house had completely transformed. The mansion that previously echoed only the sound of his solitary footsteps now vibrated with laughter, conversations, and the contagious energy of a child discovering the world. Matthew woke up every day with a renewed purpose. Work, which previously consumed 12 hours of his day, was now carefully limited so that he could spend time with Emily. She, in turn, had adapted to the new reality with an ease that impressed him, but without ever losing the gentleness and gratitude that touched him so deeply. That Thursday morning, Matthew went down to the kitchen and found a surprise. Emily had gotten up early and prepared breakfast for both of them. The result was adorably imperfect: slightly burnt toast, orange juice with floating peels, scrambled eggs a bit overcooked, but the proud smile on her little face was worth more than any five-star banquet. "Surprise!" she shouted. a word she had learned watching cartoons on the new television that Matthew had installed in her room. "I made breakfast for Daddy." Matthew stopped in the middle of the kitchen, his heart racing. It was the first time Emily had called him Daddy, and the naturalness with which the word came from her lips made his eyes fill with tears. "It's perfect, sweetheart," he said, hugging her tightly. "Thank you for taking care of me. It's just that I wanted to show you I can do other things besides cleaning," explained Emily, serving the coffee with solemnity. "And Carmen taught me yesterday." Carmen was the new employee that Matthew had hired, an experienced lady in childcare, who came during the day to help with Emily while he worked. Unlike the previous staff, who barely interacted with Matthew, Carmen had brought human warmth to the house and had immediately been enchanted with the girl. During breakfast, Emily excitedly told about the plans she had made for that day. She wanted to show Matthew the new drawings she had created, especially a school project she had imagined. Then, if he agreed, she would like to help Carmen in the garden, planting flowers in the veranda planters. "Are you going to work a lot today?" she asked, stirring sugar in the milk with adorable concentration. "I'll try to work just in the morning," Matthew replied. "In the afternoon we can do something together. What would you like?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Could we go out to see the city? I only know the streets where I wandered lost, but I've never seen the beautiful places." The innocence of the observation touched Matthew deeply. Emily had known Los Angeles only through its cruelest side, sleeping in parks and asking for food. It was time for her to discover the beauty that also existed in that metropolis. "Then that's what we'll do," decided Matthew. "I'll show you the most beautiful places in the city." After breakfast, Matthew retreated to his office to resolve some urgent matters while Emily stayed with Carmen in the pool area, which had become her favorite spot for drawing. Even while concentrating on contracts and spreadsheets, Matthew constantly looked through the office window that overlooked the outdoor area, observing his adoptive daughter working on her projects. Emily's drawings had evolved significantly in the last few weeks. Matthew had bought her professional drawing materials, rulers, squares, special pencils. With the aid of these instruments, she was able to create surprisingly elaborate floor plans for a child her age. Around noon, Matthew decided to take a break from work to have lunch with Emily. He found her in the office, leaning over the coffee table surrounded by dozens of drawings. She was so concentrated that she didn't even notice when he approached. "Can I see what you're creating?" asked Matthew, sitting on the floor beside her. "I'm trying to draw that school I told you about," Emily explained, showing a sheet covered with careful lines, "but it's hard to make it look the way I see it in my head." Matthew examined the drawing and was genuinely impressed. Emily had created a complete floor plan with classrooms, library, cafeteria, recreation area. There were even indications of where the garden, community vegetable garden, and bathrooms adapted for small children would be located. "Emily, this is incredible," Matthew said, picking up other drawings scattered on the floor. "You've thought of everything. Look, you even put a special room for children with special needs." "That's because at the shelter there was a girl who used a wheelchair," explained Emily. "And she was always sad because she couldn't go to some places. So I thought that in my school all places would have ramps." The social sensitivity of that 6-year-old child continued to surprise Matthew. Emily not only dreamed of beautiful spaces, but of inclusive spaces, designed to welcome all children. "You know what I think?" said Matthew, an idea beginning to form in his mind. "I think we should transform some of these drawings of yours into reality." "What do you mean, Daddy?" "I have a construction company. We build buildings, houses, shopping malls, but we've never built a special school for children like you imagined." Emily's eyes widened. "You can really build it?" "I can, and you know what else? You could be my special consultant. You would help me understand what children really need." "Special consultant?" "It's someone very important who gives ideas and helps make decisions," Matthew explained. "And you have the best ideas I've ever seen." Emily jumped into Matthew's lap, hugging him with all the strength of her thin little arms. "Are you really serious, Daddy?" "Completely serious. We're going to build the school of your dreams." After lunch, Matthew kept his promise and took Emily to see Los Angeles. They started at Griffith Park, where she ran across the lawns with a freedom she had never experienced. Then they went to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, where Emily was fascinated with the exhibited works, especially with the architectural models. "Daddy, do people make tiny houses before making the big ones?" she asked, observing a model of a famous building. "They do. That way they can see if the project will be good before they start building for real." "Then I need to make my schools tiny first too?" "That would be a great idea," agreed Matthew, already planning to buy materials so she could build models. The late afternoon, they stopped at an ice cream shop in Silver Lake. Emily chose a strawberry ice cream with chocolate topping, and Matthew ordered a simple vanilla ice cream. They sat at a table on the sidewalk, watching the street movement. "Daddy," said Emily, carefully licking the ice cream so as not to waste anything, "can I ask you a question?" "You always can." "Why did you never have a family before?" "You're so good." Matthew sighed, trying to find adequate words to explain to a child the complexities of his previous life. "Sometimes people get so busy chasing other things that they forget what really matters. I spent a lot of time building a company, making money, thinking that was the most important thing. And now you think it's not. Now I know that the most important thing is having someone to share life with, someone like you." Emily smiled, swinging her little legs that didn't reach the floor. "I never had a real family before either, just you. And I never had a real daughter, just you." When they returned home, it was already getting dark. Emily had fallen asleep in the back seat of the car, hugging the teddy bear that Matthew had bought for her in the park. He carried her to the bedroom, observing how she seemed at peace, finally safe and protected. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Matthew stayed in the office working on something different. They weren't contracts or financial reports, but research on early childhood education, innovative pedagogical methods, school architecture. For the first time in his career, he was planning a project that didn't have profit as its main objective, but rather social impact. He opened a new folder on the computer and began to write, "Project Emily's School, Educational Center for Children in Vulnerable Situations." As he typed, he incorporated all the ideas that his daughter had shared, all the details she had included in her drawings. Around midnight, Matthew heard small footsteps in the corridor. Emily appeared at the office door, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Daddy, are you still working?" "I'm working on something very special," Matthew said, turning the monitor so she could see. "I'm starting to plan our school." Emily ran to him, climbing onto his lap to better see the screen. "Our school. Our school. Yours and mine." "It's going to be the most beautiful school in the world," murmured Emily, resting her little head on Matthew's shoulder. "It's going to be the most beautiful school in the world," agreed Matthew, kissing the top of her head, "because it was created with a lot of love." At that moment, watching his daughter fall asleep in his arms while on the computer screen shone the first sketches of a shared dream, Matthew understood that he had found not only a family, but also a greater purpose for his life. To build, not just physical structures, but better futures for children who, like Emily, deserved all the opportunities the world could offer. 3 months after Emily's arrival, Matthew faced the most important day since he had decided to legally adopt her. The social worker assigned by the Children's Court was arriving for the final visit, the one that would determine if he would be approved as the legal guardian of the girl he already considered his daughter in every sense. Matthew adjusted his tie for the 5th time and looked in the mirror. He had never been so nervous, not even during the most complex negotiations of his career. This time it wasn't just money or contracts at stake, but the future of the most important person in his life. "Daddy, are you okay?" Emily appeared at the bedroom door, wearing the yellow dress they had bought especially for that day. Gradually she had learned to read Matthew's expressions and clearly perceived his anxiety. "I'm a little nervous," admitted Matthew, kneeling down to be at her height. "And you? How are you feeling?" "I'm nervous too," confessed Emily, playing with the dress ribbons. "What if the lady says I can't stay with you?" Matthew held her little face between his hands gently. "That won't happen, my daughter. We'll show her how happy we are together, how well our family works." "Family," repeated Emily, smiling. "I like when you say that word." The doorbell rang exactly at 10 o'clock. Matthew took a deep breath and went to receive Dr. Patricia Morgan, a middle-aged woman with a professional look, but not devoid of kindness. During the previous months, she had visited the house several times, always observing, taking notes, evaluating. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," greeted Patricia. "Good morning, Emily. How are you?" "Good morning, Dr. Morgan," Emily responded politely, but Matthew noticed the nervousness in her voice. The social worker spent the next 2 hours observing the interaction between father and daughter, asking questions, examining Emily's room, talking separately with each of them. Matthew answered all questions honestly, talked about the changes in his life, about how Emily had become his absolute priority. During the individual conversation with Emily, Matthew stayed in the garden, walking nervously among the rose bushes that she had insisted on planting. Through the living room window, he could see the two talking, Emily gesturing animatedly while showing her drawings to the social worker. When Patricia left the house, almost 2 hours later, her face revealed nothing. "Mr. Reynolds, I'll make my decision in the next few days. You will receive the official communication." After the social worker's departure, Matthew found Emily sitting on the living room sofa, hugging the teddy bear, with a worried expression. "What did you think of the conversation?" asked Matthew, sitting beside her. "She asked a lot of questions," Emily sighed. "She asked if I was happy here, if you took good care of me, if I missed anything." "And what did you answer?" "I told the truth, that I've never been so happy in my whole life, that you're the best daddy in the world, and that the only thing I miss is knowing if I'll be able to stay forever." Matthew hugged his daughter, feeling his heart tighten. At that moment, he understood that no matter how much he had changed his life because of Emily, it was she who risked being harmed if things didn't work out. To distract them from anxiety, Matthew suggested they visit the land where they intended to build the school. It was a large lot in Silver Lake that he had acquired especially for the project. Emily had never seen the location, only heard Matthew talk about it. When they arrived at the land, Emily came running out of the car. The space was larger than she had imagined, almost 5,000 square meters of flat area, with some old trees that Matthew had insisted on preserving in the project. "Is this where we're going to build our school?" asked Emily, spinning in the middle of the empty land, arms open. "Right here, what do you think?" "It's perfect, Daddy. There's room for everything I drew and much more." Matthew took from the car some floor plans that his architects had developed. Based on Emily's drawings, he spread the papers on the car hood and called the girl to see. "Oh my God!" exclaimed Emily, eyes wide with surprise. "You took my drawings and made them for real." "Not only took them," smiled Matthew, "I improved them with the help of the best architects I know. Look." The project was truly impressive. The school would have 15 classrooms, a 2-story library, a science laboratory adapted for children, an art studio, a covered multisport court, a spacious cafeteria, a playground area with inclusive equipment, a community vegetable garden, and even a small outdoor amphitheater. And here, Matthew pointed to a specific area of the plan, will be the Emily Space, a special place where children can draw and create architectural projects just like you. Emily was silent for a long moment, absorbing all the information. Then, unexpectedly, she began to cry. "What's wrong, my daughter?" Matthew knelt beside her, concerned. "It's just that I never thought anyone would take my dreams so seriously," sobbed Emily. "At the shelter, when I talked about building houses for children, the others laughed at me. They said orphan girls couldn't have big dreams." Matthew felt a deep anger imagining his daughter being discouraged by adults who should protect and encourage her. "Listen well, Emily. Your dreams are neither too small nor too big. They're perfect just as they are, and I'll do everything to make them come true. Even if Dr. Morgan says I can't stay with you." "Even then," promised Matthew, although inside he desperately hoped that this possibility would not materialize. They spent the whole afternoon on the land. Matthew explained each detail of the project, showed where each environment would be, how the children would circulate through the spaces. Emily asked intelligent questions, suggested modifications, demonstrated a surprising understanding of functionality and aesthetics. "Daddy," she said when they were returning home, "can I tell you a secret? You can tell me all the secrets you want. You know that paper I kept on the nightstand when I arrived at home?" Matthew vaguely remembered seeing a folded piece of paper on the first day. "I remember. It was a drawing I made at the shelter of a family, a daddy, a mommy, and a little daughter living in a house with a garden. And why didn't you show me before?" "Because it was just a dream. I thought it would never happen for real." "And now?" "Now I know that half of it has already happened. I have the daddy and the house with a garden. All that's missing is—" Emily stopped talking, but Matthew knew exactly what she was thinking. The absence of a maternal figure was something he felt too, but didn't know how to approach. His love life had been a succession of superficial relationships with women more interested in his wealth than in a true connection. "Do you miss having a mother?" asked Matthew carefully. "Sometimes," admitted Emily, "but not just any mother. A special mother who likes you and me the same way. If such a person ever appears in our lives, would you be happy?" "I would," smiled Emily, "but only if she's really good, and if she likes my drawings." Matthew laughed, impressed once again with his daughter's practicality. For her, liking architecture was an important prerequisite for being part of the family. When they arrived home, there was an official envelope in the mail. Matthew immediately recognized the children's court letterhead. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope while Emily waited anxiously by his side. "What does it say, Daddy?" Matthew quickly read the document, feeling his legs weaken. "It says that Dr. Morgan approved our family. I am officially your father and you are officially my daughter." Emily shouted with joy and jumped into Matthew's arms, who spun her in the air while they both cried with happiness. After months of uncertainty, they finally had the legal certainty that they would always be together. "Now no one can separate us?" asked Emily, still clinging to her father's neck. "Never again," assured Matthew. "We're a family forever." That night they celebrated with a special dinner that they prepared together. Emily insisted on calling Carmen to share the news, and Matthew phoned his few close friends to share the joy. Before going to sleep, Emily brought the crumpled piece of paper she had kept for so long and showed it to Matthew. It was indeed a simple drawing of a happy family, made with the innocent hope of a child who believed her dreams could come true. "Now I can throw it away," she said. "I don't need to dream anymore. I already have all this for real." "Don't throw it away," asked Matthew. "Let's frame it and put it in our school when it's finished. To remember that all dreams can come true when we find the right people to share them with." Emily agreed, carefully storing the drawing in a special folder where she collected her most important works. When Matthew tucked her into bed, she held his hand before he left the room. "Daddy, thank you for opening the gate that day." "Thank you for ringing the doorbell," responded Matthew, kissing his daughter's forehead. As Emily fell asleep safe in her bed, Matthew remained a few more minutes, watching her. In a few months, that girl had transformed not only his house, but his soul. She had restored purpose to his existence and shown that true success was not measured in bank figures, but in the ability to make a difference in the lives of those we love. 6 months after the official adoption, Matthew and Emily's life had found a perfect rhythm. The construction of the school was advancing rapidly, and Emily followed each stage of the work with the enthusiasm of someone seeing their deepest dreams taking shape in reality. Matthew had completely reorganized his work schedule to be present in the important moments of his daughter's life, and had discovered that being a father was infinitely more rewarding than any previous business achievement. That Saturday morning, Matthew woke up to the familiar sound of Emily singing softly in the next room. She had developed the habit of waking up early on weekends to organize her drawing materials and plan new architectural projects. Each day, her creations became more elaborate and technical. "Good morning, my favorite architect," said Matthew, appearing at her bedroom door. Good morning, Daddy. Come see what I did last night before going to sleep. Emily was leaning over a table that Matthew had specially made for her, with appropriate height and organized drawers for all her materials. On the table, an impressive project. The plan for a daycare specialized in children from 0 to 3 years old. I thought our school needed a daycare too, explained Emily, showing each detail of the drawing. So mothers who work can leave their babies safely. Matthew was again impressed with his daughter's social maturity. At 7 years old, she already understood complex concepts about family and community needs. It's a wonderful project, sweetheart. I'll show it to the team architects. Really? Emily's eyes shone. Won't they think it's strange for a child to be giving ideas? They're already used to it. Every week I take your suggestions, and they're increasingly impressed with your creativity. It was true. The team of architects and engineers working on the school project had become accustomed to receiving Emily's contributions, which invariably improved functional aspects that adults hadn't considered. After breakfast, which had become a sacred ritual for both of them, Matthew suggested a visit to the school construction site. Emily loved following the progress of the construction, and the workers already knew her and treated her with special affection. "Hi, Emily," greeted Mike, the construction foreman, when they arrived at the site. "Come see how the library turned out. I think you'll like it." The library was almost finished, and it was even more impressive than Emily had imagined. 2 floors connected by a spiral staircase, large windows that allowed abundant natural light, cozy reading nooks, and a special section for small children, with colorful furniture and cushions scattered on the floor. "Daddy, it's exactly as I dreamed," murmured Emily, emotional. "The children will love reading here." "And you'll be the first to use it," promised Matthew. "When the school opens, you'll be our first special student." As they walked through the construction, Matthew noticed that Emily was quieter than normal. He knew his daughter well enough to know that something was bothering her. "What are you thinking about, little one?" "Daddy, can I ask a kind of strange question?" "You can ask any question." "Do you think my real mother would be proud of me if she saw me now?" The question caught Matthew off guard. Although Emily rarely spoke about her origin, he knew that sometimes she wondered about the woman who had brought her into the world. "I'm absolutely certain that any mother would be extremely proud to have a daughter like you," answered Matthew with sincerity. "You're intelligent, caring, talented, generous. Anyone would feel lucky to be your mother. Sometimes I imagine what she would be like, if she would like architecture, if she would know how to draw, if she would have hair like mine." Matthew knelt down to be at Emily's height. "You know what I think? I think your biological mother, wherever she is, must have a special connection with you. And who knows, maybe one day destiny will allow you to meet." "Do you really believe that?" "I do. After all, destiny brought me you, didn't it?" Emily smiled, hugging Matthew tightly. "That's true. Maybe it will bring other good surprises too." As they were leaving the construction site, Matthew was approached by the new landscape architect who had been hired to design the school gardens. She was a young woman, around 30, brown hair tied in a practical ponytail, clothes suitable for field work, but with a warm smile that immediately caught his attention. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Sarah Mitchell, the landscape architect responsible for the garden project. I'd like to discuss some issues about the green areas." "Of course," responded Matthew, noticing that Emily had hidden behind his legs, suddenly shy. "This is my daughter, Emily. Emily, this is Sarah, who will take care of our school gardens." "Hi, Emily." Sarah knelt down to speak at the girl's level. "I heard you're the true creator of this school. You must understand a lot about plants and gardens, too." "A little bit," murmured Emily. But Matthew noticed she was observing Sarah with interest. "That's great, because I need the help of someone who understands children to know what kind of plants they like most. Would you help me?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Yes, I would. I know several things about plants. Carmen taught me how to take care of the garden at home." For the next hour, Matthew watched fascinated the interaction between Sarah and Emily. The landscape architect didn't speak to the girl in a condescending way, as many adults did, but treated her as a serious consultant, listening to her opinions and incorporating her suggestions into the project. What if we made a vegetable garden where the children themselves could plant and take care of the vegetables?" suggested Sarah. "What a good idea!" exclaimed Emily. "That way they learn where food comes from and also take care of nature." "Exactly. And we could have an area with aromatic plants for children to learn about different smells and textures." Matthew realized he was smiling involuntarily as he watched the conversation. Sarah had something special in the way she related to Emily, a naturalness and genuine interest that deeply touched his heart. When they finished discussing the gardens, Sarah suggested they go get a snack at a nearby cafe to continue talking about the project. Matthew accepted, more interested in the company than in the technical discussion itself. "Can I order ice cream?" asked Emily when they sat in the cafe. "Yes, you can," answered Matthew. "Sarah, would you like anything?" Simple coffee is good for me." While Emily was distracted with her ice cream, Matthew took the opportunity to get to know Sarah better. He discovered that she had graduated in landscape architecture from UCLA, had previously worked on social projects, and had a special passion for creating green spaces in underprivileged communities. "What caught my attention about the school project," explained Sarah, "was knowing that it came from a child's drawings. It's rare to see adults taking children's ideas so seriously." "Emily has a special talent," said Matthew, looking affectionately at his daughter, "and an impressive social sensitivity. Everything she designs is thought to include and welcome." "That's beautiful," Sarah smiled. "And you? How did a real estate businessman decide to invest in social education?" Matthew hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell the truth. "Actually, it was Emily who changed my perspective on everything. She came into my life unexpectedly and showed me that there are things much more important than profit and business growth." "She was adopted?" "She was, and it was the best decision I've ever made in my life." Sarah looked at Emily with evident affection. "She's lucky to have a father like you, and you're lucky to have a daughter like her." "Hi, Sarah," Emily interrupted the adults' conversation. "Do you have children?" "I don't, Emily, but I love children. I've always wanted to have a family. I just haven't found the right person to share that dream yet." Matthew felt his heart accelerate with the response and noticed that Emily was processing the information with her typical childlike seriousness. "Do you like to draw?" continued Emily. "I love to. I draw gardens and parks all the time. And do you like architecture?" "I love architecture. Landscape architecture and architecture work together to create beautiful and functional spaces." Matthew realized where his daughter was going with the questions and tried to hide a smile. "And have you ever been married?" asked Emily, with the frankness typical of children. "Emily," Matthew tried to intervene, embarrassed. "It's okay," laughed Sarah. "I was engaged once, but it didn't work out. Sometimes people want different things from life." "What do you want from life?" insisted Emily. Sarah thought for a moment before answering. "I want to do work that helps people, have a family that truly loves me, and plant gardens where children can play and be happy." Emily exchanged a meaningful look with Matthew, who perfectly understood what was going through his daughter's mind. When they left the cafe, Sarah offered to accompany them to the car. On the way, Emily walked between the two adults, holding each one's hand as if she wanted to physically connect them. "Sarah," said Emily when they reached the car, "would you like to come have dinner at our house tomorrow? Daddy and I can cook. And you can see our garden at home. I helped make it." Matthew was mortified by his daughter's boldness, but Sarah seemed genuinely touched by the invitation. "I would love to, Emily, if your father agrees, of course." "I agree," said Matthew quickly, surprising himself. "It would be a pleasure to have you." "Then it's settled," celebrated Emily. "It's going to be the best dinner in the world." On the way back home, Emily was visibly excited, humming softly, and swinging her feet in the back seat. "Did you like Sarah, sweetheart?" "I liked her a lot, Daddy. She's different from the other people we know." "Different how?" "She looks at me like I'm really important, and she has a smile like yours when you're happy." Matthew smiled, impressed once again with his daughter's keen perception. "And what did you think about inviting her to dinner?" "I thought you two need to get to know each other better," answered Emily, with the disconcerting wisdom she sometimes demonstrated. Sometimes destiny needs a little help. That night, while Emily slept, Matthew stayed awake thinking about the afternoon they had spent. It had been a long time since he felt so comfortable in the presence of a woman, and the way Sarah had interacted with Emily showed a potential that he didn't dare name yet. Maybe his daughter was right. Maybe destiny really did need a little help sometimes. And maybe, just maybe, that family Emily had drawn on her crumpled paper was closer to being complete than he imagined. The dinner was set for 7 o'clock on Sunday, and Matthew had never prepared so much to receive a visitor. Emily had insisted on helping with all the preparations, from choosing the menu to setting the table. For her, this wasn't just a work dinner, but a meeting that could change their lives forever. "Daddy, do you think she'll like the lasagna?" asked Emily for the 5th time, adjusting the napkins on the dinner table. "I'm sure she will, sweetheart, and even if she didn't, what matters is the care we put into the preparation." "It's just that I want everything to be perfect," sighed Emily, smoothing the blue dress she had chosen especially for the occasion. "She needs to know that our house is full of love." Matthew stopped seasoning the salad and looked at his daughter with tenderness. In the last few months, he had noticed how Emily yearned for a maternal figure, although she never expressed it directly. The way she had instantly connected with Sarah showed a deep need that he alone couldn't completely fulfill. "Emily, you know I love you very much, and that our family is complete, just the two of us, don't you?" "I know, Daddy, but sometimes I think you're also lonely when I'm at school or sleeping. And Sarah seems to be the kind of person who would make you smile more." The emotional maturity of that 7-year-old girl continued to surprise Matthew. How could she perceive nuances of adult feelings with such clarity? The doorbell rang exactly at 7 o'clock. Sarah arrived carrying a small pot with flower seedlings and a radiant smile that illuminated the entrance of the house. "I brought these for Emily," said Sarah, handing the pot to the girl. "They're sunflower seeds. I thought you'd like to plant them and watch them grow." "How beautiful!" exclaimed Emily, hugging the pot as if it were a treasure. "I'll take care of them every day. Daddy, can we plant them in the garden after dinner?" "Of course we can," agreed Matthew, observing how Sarah had hit the nail on the head with the present. "Sarah, welcome to our home." The dinner went surprisingly naturally. Sarah genuinely praised the lasagna that Matthew and Emily had prepared together, and the conversation flowed effortlessly among the three. Matthew discovered that Sarah had a delicious sense of humor and a contagious passion for the work she did. "You know, Sarah," said Emily during dessert, "I made a new drawing thinking of you." "Really? Can I see it?" Emily ran to her room and returned with a carefully folded sheet of paper. When she opened it, it revealed the drawing of a magnificent garden, with children playing among the flowers, a vegetable garden in the background, and benches scattered under leafy trees. "This is how I imagine our school garden will look when you finish it," explained Emily. "I drew you here in the middle, teaching children about plants." Sarah was visibly moved. "Emily, this is the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen in my life. Can I keep it?" "You can. It's my gift to you." Matthew observed the exchange between the two with a smile in his heart. The connection between Sarah and Emily was evident and genuine, not forced or artificial. After dinner, the three went to the garden to plant the sunflower seeds. Sarah showed Emily the correct planting technique, explaining about depth, spacing, and necessary care. Matthew found himself watching the two more than participating in the activity. "Daddy, you're very quiet," observed Emily, with her hands dirty with soil. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfect, sweetheart. I'm just enjoying this moment." When they finished planting, Emily asked to show Sarah the rest of the garden. As the two walked among the rose bushes and flower beds, Matthew followed at a distance, listening to the animated conversation about different types of plants and their characteristics. "Sarah," said Emily suddenly, stopping in the middle of the garden, "can I ask you a personal question?" "You can, of course. Do you think you could like my daddy? Like dating him for real?" Matthew almost choked on his own saliva. Emily had asked the question with the same naturalness as she would ask about the weather. Sarah blushed slightly, but answered honestly, Your father is a very special man, Emily. Any woman would feel lucky to be loved by him. And would you like to be our family too? Because I already like you a lot, and I think you two like each other too. You're just too shy to say it. Matthew approached, deciding to intervene before Emily made more embarrassing revelations. Emily, you're being very direct. But it's true, Daddy. You two keep looking at each other when you think I'm not watching. Sarah laughed, a musical sound that filled the garden. She's right, Matthew. We're very obvious. The comment created a moment of silence loaded with possibilities. Matthew felt he was at an inflection point, one of those moments in life where a decision can change everything. Sarah, he said, gathering courage, would you like to go out with me sometime? Just the two of us? I would love to, answered Sarah, smiling. Yay, celebrated Emily, clapping her hands. Now our family is going to be complete. Slow down, little one, laughed Matthew. Things don't happen that fast. Why not? Asked Emily with the relentless logic of children. You like each other, I like both of you, you both like me. What else do you need? Sarah knelt down to be at Emily's height. It takes time, little one. For us to get to know each other better, to be sure that this is really what we want. But you already know it is, insisted Emily. I can see it in your eyes. Matthew was impressed with his daughter's perception, but also slightly concerned with her expectations. Emily, you need to understand that things between adults are complicated. Even if Sarah and I like each other, that doesn't automatically mean we're going to get married and be a family. Why not? Emily's simple question echoed in the night air. Why not indeed? Matthew realized that his resistance came more from fear than from practical reasons. You know what I think? Said Sarah, looking directly at Matthew. I think we should let things happen naturally, without rush, without pressure, but also without fear. I agree, said Matthew, feeling an inner peace he hadn't experienced for a long time. And I can help you get to know each other better, Emily offered enthusiastically. I can tell Sarah all the good things about Daddy, and tell Daddy all the good things about Sarah. Thank you for the offer, laughed Sarah, but I think we can figure that out ourselves. When Sarah left around 10 o'clock at night, Matthew and Emily stayed on the porch waving until her car disappeared at the corner. Did you like her, Daddy? I liked her very much, sweetheart. And you? I think she's perfect for our family. She's kind, intelligent, likes children, understands plants, and she made you laugh more times today than I see you laugh in an entire week. Matthew hugged his daughter, impressed once again with her wisdom. And if things don't work out between me and her, will you be upset? No, answered Emily with conviction. Because I know they will work out. How can you be so sure? Because you look at each other the same way I imagine people who love each other should look, and because she drew a family on the napkin during dinner. She drew what? A little. Drawing on the napkin. A man, a woman, and a child holding hands, just like my old drawing. Matthew was silent, processing this information. Sarah had drawn a family unconsciously during dinner. Could it be possible that she was also visualizing a future together with them? In the days that followed, Matthew and Sarah began to meet regularly. First, they were meetings related to the schoolwork, then walks in the park, dinners in restaurants, long conversations that extended into the early hours. Emily was always present, not as an intrusive third person, but as the link that made everything more natural and spontaneous. 1 month after the first dinner, Matthew decided it was time for a serious conversation with Sarah. They arranged to meet at the school construction site, which was almost ready. It was a golden late afternoon, and the gardens that Sarah had designed were beginning to take shape. Sarah, said Matthew, as they walked through the area that would be the playground, I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm in love. With you. Sarah stopped walking and looked directly at him. I'm in love with you too, Matthew. Even knowing that I come with a 7-year-old daughter who loves to give opinions on our relationship. Especially because of that, laughed Sarah. Emily is one of the most special people I've ever met. Any man who managed to raise a child like that must be extraordinary. Matthew held Sarah's hands. So you would agree? To form a family with us? I would agree to anything with you two." At that moment they heard a familiar voice shouting from afar, "Yay! Yay! Yay!" They turned and saw Emily running toward them, having escaped from Carmen, who was accompanying her on a visit to the construction site. The girl threw herself into their arms, creating a collective hug in the middle of the future school garden. "Are you going to get married?" asked Emily, breathless from running. "We are," answered Matthew, looking at Sarah, who nodded with a radiant smile. "Can I be the flower girl?" "You can be whatever you want," said Sarah, kissing the girl's forehead, "including our official consultant for the wedding planning." "And can I call you Mom?" Emily's question made Sarah emotional to tears. "It would be the greatest honor of my life, my love." 6 months later, on the day of the school inauguration, Matthew, Sarah, and Emily were at the entrance of the building, cutting the symbolic ribbon. The school was exactly as Emily had dreamed, a place where children in vulnerable situations would receive quality education, food, affection, and especially hope. The name chosen for the institution had been Emily's suggestion: Sunflower School. Educational Center of Hope. The sunflowers she had planted with Sarah were now blooming throughout the garden, their faces always turned toward the sun, as a symbol that there is always light, even in the most difficult moments. During the inauguration ceremony, Emily was invited to speak at the microphone. With her recently completed 8 years, she climbed onto the improvised stage in the schoolyard, and with the confidence of someone who had learned that her dreams mattered, addressed the community children who would be the first students. "Hi, everyone," began Emily, her clear voice echoing through the sound system. "I'm Emily, and this school began with a drawing I made when I was little." Matthew and Sarah, watching from the audience, exchanged emotional looks. "I wanted to tell you that it doesn't matter where you come from, or if you don't have a home, or if sometimes you go hungry. I've been through all that too. But what matters is that you have dreams, and dreams can come true when we find people who believe in us." The audience was in complete silence, adults and children equally touched by the simple but profound words of the girl. "This school is for you, to dream big, for you to study, play, grow, and one day build beautiful things for other children too. Because when someone takes care of us, we learn to take care of others." When Emily finished speaking, the ovation was warm and prolonged. Matthew went up on stage and hugged her, whispering in her ear, "I'm very proud of you, my daughter. I'm proud of us, Daddy, of our family." Sarah joined them on stage, and the three stood hand in hand, watching the first children running through the gardens that had been created with so much love. That night, after all the guests had left and the school was silent, Matthew, Sarah, and Emily took one last walk through the corridors. Emily had insisted on showing Sarah all the details that had been incorporated based on her original drawings. "Mom, Sarah," said Emily when they stopped in the library, "can I show you something special?" Sarah smiled upon hearing the affectionate treatment that Emily had adopted. "You can show me, my love." Emily ran to one of the shelves and took out a special book that had been placed there by the inauguration team. It was a book made especially for the school, containing all of Emily's original drawings, from the first scribbles to the most elaborate projects. "This book tells our story," explained Emily, leafing through the pages. "How I arrived at Daddy's house, how we began to dream about this school, how you came into our family, and how all our dreams came true." Sarah looked at the pages of the book, seeing the evolution of Emily's drawings over the months, and was moved to see that in many of the more recent drawings she herself appeared, always smiling alongside Matthew and Emily. "And do you know what the last page is?" asked Emily, turning to the end of the book. The last page showed a drawing of the complete family, Matthew, Sarah, and Emily, holding hands in front of the school, with dozens of children playing in the background. At the top of the page, in Emily's careful handwriting, was written, "When we believe in dreams, they grow like sunflowers." "It's perfect," murmured Sarah, hugging Emily. "Our story is perfect." "It's not over yet," said Emily with a mischievous smile. "This is just the first part. Now we're going to live many more adventures together." Matthew observed his wife and his daughter embracing among the shelves of the library that had been born from the imagination of a 6-year-old girl, and understood that sometimes the greatest successes in life have nothing to do with money or professional achievements. They have to do with the courage to open our hearts to those who knock at our door, asking only for an opportunity to be loved. 3 years later, when Emily turned 11, she had already inspired the creation of 2 more schools based on the same model, and her architectural projects had become a reference in inclusive educational design. Matthew and Sarah had married in a simple ceremony in the school garden, with Emily as the proudest flower girl in the world. On that day of Emily's birthday, as the 3 generations of the family, because Carmen had also become an adoptive grandmother, celebrated in the home garden among the sunflowers that now covered the entire yard, Matthew reflected on how a doorbell rung on a rainy afternoon had transformed not only 2 lives, but dozens of others through the school that continued to grow and impact the community. "Daddy," said Emily, blowing out the candles on the cake, "want to know what my wish was?" "Want to tell me?" "I wish that all children in the world have the chance I had, to find a family that believes in their dreams." Matthew hugged his daughter, knowing that that wish, like all of Emily's dreams, had a good chance of coming true. After all, he had learned that when you have enough love to share, miracles don't just happen, they multiply. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Matthew, Emily, and Sarah has deeply touched your hearts, just as it touched ours. This narrative reminds us that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the simplest gestures: opening a door, extending a hand, believing in a child's dreams. To continue experiencing emotional moments like this, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore the mysteries of the human heart and the strength of family bonds. Find our special selection by clicking here. If you were moved by the journey of little Emily and her heart family, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique narratives that celebrate the transformative power of love and hope. We really want to know what you thought of this story in the comments. Tell us, which moment moved you the most? Do you also believe that dreams can become reality when we find the right people to share them with? We await you here in the comments and see you in the next story that will warm your hearts.